It has private schools, it has Kendriya Vidyalayas, it has government schools, it has DAVs. So these 75 schools, we did a questionnaire to look at the status of school health and also to look at the various life skills and what is happening in schools. And through this questionnaire, then we found out that there were gaps. This was in 2000. And the last 14 years, you've seen that you have a comprehensive school health program, and then you have, which was replaced or which was subsumed under the life skills program. In the life skills that we focus on are creative and critical, all the 21st century skills. And also, a lot of research has gone on in Harvard, and Tom Wagner has brought out a series of survival skills. A lot of them have an overlap with the life skills that we are speaking about. Because if you want to look at, and you can pick up instances of people who are successful at their workplace, then it is not due to the degrees and the marks and the academic excellence, but it is more due to what kind of decision making they are able to do, what kind of problem solving they are able to do, what kind of risk taking they are able to take up, what kind of critical thinking and creative thinking, thinking out of the box, and laterally being able to connect things in a world which is gradually interconnected. Sometimes you find that there are people who just cannot get along with others. They are great workers. They work exceptionally well individually. But if you ask them to work in a team, then it is a total disaster because they just cannot get along with other people. I have a person in my department whose 28 people under her have changed because everybody who comes to work with her, and she's a very bright, exceptionally bright officer, but she's not able to work as a team. So she will tell the other person that, okay, now you don't do it, I will do it myself, which means that the standards that are expected are so exacting that people are not able to come up to that standard. In that case, what happens is that a very bright person will go 20 years of their work span, but they will not be able to develop more leaders. Whereas I think for the future, what is important is that every student in school should be nurtured to be a leader. And how can you be a leader? What are the leadership skills? Some of the life skills, of course, but in addition to that, each one of us, each student has a unique potential. I'm sure as educators, all of us believe that every child has something special about them, something unique about them, some kind of brilliance in them, which needs to be nurtured. So when we say that, and if we believe in it strongly, then what are we doing towards achieving that? By telling students that, look, you are very bad at maths and you'll never be good and maybe you'll never be able to do well in life, that's not going to help. If a child is bad at a particular subject, it only means that more opportunities need to be given to that particular child so that there is maybe more practice, maybe graded worksheets. There has to be some answer to a solution where we find that there is a problem. The CBSE for the last few years has been talking about inclusion, and inclusion from the rights perspective, which means that inclusion doesn't just mean that if you have a visually challenged child, you have 2 or 3 children in the school and that's it. Inclusion means that in the same class, that's what we mean as a board, that in the same class you have children from various strata of society, which includes the lower disadvantaged socioeconomic rung of society. It also means that you have those who are differently abled, which means not just physical disability, but also learning disability. Also, we've also said that depending on, even if it is autism or if it is MR, if they can be integrated to some level. So this has a two-pronged effect. In a classroom, if I have been with differently able children, I can appreciate and I can empathize with the kind of difficulties they face while they are doing something. And similarly, because anybody who's disadvantaged does not want sympathy. They don't want people to say, oh, the poor thing is not able to do this. Even if it is a simple thing of dyslexia. Sometimes children who are dyslexic are extremely bright, or children who are autistic are brilliant. But because of their behavior, because of the behavior pattern, because of something that is visible, and because of lack of awareness or ignorance, we don't recognize the worth of an individual. So inclusion is a very important aspect of the future. And I think we are going to work with much more focus in this area so that there is greater understanding, awareness, and responsibility and accountability, both from the administrative point of view of school principals and heads of schools, and also from in terms of the strategies that a teacher can employ in a classroom, as well as the kind of, definitely the kind of the relaxations that can be given without differentiated curriculum. What is it that you can help so that an inclusive classroom has assessment which is multi-pronged and which is in multiple modes. So if we are looking at inclusive classrooms, if we are looking at skills, developing skills for the future, and if we are looking at innovative subjects, you know, there is a distinct difficulty in introducing more subjects which are like at the edges of disciplines. They are not really full-fledged disciplines themselves as of now, but in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, they will be well-known subjects. So the fact that we have rigid disciplines such as physics, chemistry, biology is because we know them as disciplines. They have been there for 50 years. So the university recognizes them as disciplines. But the moment you think of innovative ways of introducing new subjects at the school level, then the higher education sector also needs to change. Otherwise, we can introduce new, we've had this, the introduction of a new language, Python, which a lot of schools and of course universities are very hesitant about because there is again lack of awareness. So they still want to do C++, that is something that teachers are comfortable with. The resistance to change is so completely programmed in our DNA that we find it difficult to move out of the comfort zone. So my appeal to educators, and whenever I get this opportunity to speak to them, is to also be aware that what may be there, knowledge in books, knowledge in disciplines, needs to be also questioned. And how can we do it if we ourselves don't remain curious about what is happening in the world today in terms of subject knowledge? So there are so many ways of gathering knowledge and information that it often becomes confusing, both for the teacher as well as the student. So that's why it's important then to get study skills in place. And if we can equip learners with study skills, then we probably are creating lifelong learners, which is what is one of the most important skills in 21st century. Because again, research is saying that the jobs that we think will be there in the future, we may not even have thought about the kind of things that are happening. Even now you hear, and I'm sure you've experienced this, some of your ex-students must be coming and telling you that they're hopping jobs. We at the board have empaneled a number of agencies, private agencies, NGOs, trusts, to work with us, to partner with us, to collaborate with us in teacher training. And a lot of these, new, whether they are trusts or NGOs or even private companies, they are being run by brilliant students who have dropped, their jobs, very well-paying, exorbitant jobs in the corporate world because they want to make a difference in education. They've come together and they've created these companies, and they are focusing in education on different kinds of, whether it is developing scientific skills, whether it's developing ideas, whether it's... So what I'm trying to say is that this entrepreneurial instinct of very young, bright minds is definitely there and it's going to stay. So if we need to look at the kind of subjects that need to be changed at the school level, we are trying to do it, but we need, partners in terms of people from the university. At least private universities should be looking at expanding their horizons of their subjects, which may happen in the next maybe decade, and wishfully thinking maybe in the next 5 years. The last year when we introduced a few more subjects, like we did human rights and gender studies, I'm just giving one example. Now, human rights and gender studies is actually 2 disciplines put together. But when we wrote to 800 universities across the country, there are hardly any universities which have an undergraduate course in human rights or in gender studies. So a child who takes this, student who takes this at grade 11 and 12, and if it is not counted as a subject when you go to the university, where do they go? So it's not, you also have to look at the real world where we still, in terms of employment, want a paper qualification. So then what happens to these kids who are not, who've taken these subjects because we are saying, oh, it's good to look at, alternate options, good to look at newer subjects, newer disciplines. But when they want to get into the university, any university around the country, they say, well, we don't have this at the undergraduate level, and so we can't count this subject towards any kind of program that we have. Then it becomes a difficulty. And so I think that innovation and change has to happen in multiple layers. One of the last things that I would like to speak about, and I don't know if there are students here, I wish this message would carry to other students as well, that we often undermine the importance of failure in life. We tend to think that failure is something which one must shy away from, which one cannot learn from. And if you fail, then you in some way are not as good or are inferior, or in some way you are not going to be able to be successful. I think it's very important to understand that failure is something that we should be proud of, because at some moment in life you can turn back and say, well, there were these instances, look back and say, well, these were the instances where I felt were really pulled down because I had failed in something, and then picked up the threads from there and did this. All of us